Yes. Welcome to Epitome Lecture Series. This is the second part of the presentation by Dr. Aparajita Hazra.
Yes. Is my voice audible now?
Yes, yes, yes.
Right. So we uh, catch up from where we were. We were talking about the conceits that were central to the understanding of metaphysical poetry. And one of the greatest conceits that were there in the metaphysical age, where this is it now, like amorous birds of prey, rather at once are time devoured than languish in his slow chat hour. So, thy beauty shall no more be found. This is one more from the same poem. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honor turn to dust, and to ashes all my lust. Now, this the very grisly kind of image of worms trying that long preserved is it's a concept that has made its mark in the history of English literature. Metaphysical poetry, whether by chance or by requirement, is always kind of like sensual, more bent towards the bodily pleasures, and usually erotic somewhere or the other in the course of the utterance, thereby bringing in pleasurability in somatic terms, not in more in the somatic terms, and the use of the physical and the physiological terms in his imagery. In Go and Catch a Falling Star, there is this famous line, "Go get a child with mandrake root." So you have the example of a woman getting a child. So it's a kind of very physical kind of imagery that comes up over here. It is intellectualized poetry. Remember what T.S. Eliot had said, that intellectuality and emotion both are balanced side by side. So there was a very show their learning. This part is where I'm quoting from Samuel Johnson's, the part in Samuel Johnson's definition of metaphysical poetry. So this is one part. To show their learning was their whole endeavor. Strange imagery came in, like conceits are strange imagery, which was one thing. Extremely complicated thought processes went behind metaphysical poetry. Hyperbolical style was there. Now it was very eclectic in nature. Again, the parenthesized part is from Dr. Samuel Johnson. Nature and art are almost rummaged through, and they bring out the most esoteric kind of images and group them together to form the conceits. A Valediction Forbidding Mourning by John Donne. I'm quoting a couple of lines from there. If they be two, they are two so as stiff twin compasses. So compasses are one thing, and two lovers are a completely different ball game. But John Donne yokes the concrete form to abstract ideas. Their unusual images and comparisons, they just give concrete form to ideas which are actually abstractions. So the definition of love by Andrew Marvell is, as lines, so loves oblique may well themselves in every angle meet and agreed, but ours so truly parallel, though infinite, can never meet. So he is now talking in geometrical terms, where he's talking about how parallel lines, though they can go infinitely on and on and on, but they will never meet together because they are parallel. They don't converge. So in order to describe his love or his unrequited love, he takes up the image of parallel lines from geometry. This is what we are talking about when we are talking about esoteric images which form the conceits. Trying their best to prove a point. Dr. Johnson said their learning instructs. There's a didactic bent to their learning. Harping on the theme of carpe diem, like we said, seize the day. Investigating the humanness of life. Now, in those days, why we talk about so age of the metaphysical poetry, just before the age of metaphysical poetry, towards the 16th century, the 15th to the 16th century, there was a lot of talk about the la danse macabre, because in the black comedy in French, they called it la danse macabre, the allegorical representation of the omnipotent power of death. In German, it was called Totentanz, and in English, of course, we translate it as the dance people were very, very obsessed with at that point of time. Memento mori means remember that you shall die. Remember the inevitability of death. And that naturally led on to carpe diem. Christianity at that point of time talked about the emphasis on divine judgment, heaven and hell, and the salvation of the soul. Now, memento mori was the concept which was just opposed to the concept of nunc est bibendum, which translates to now it is the time to drink. That is, now it was something that the Cavalier poets talked about. So, in the Vulgate Latin rendering of it, in all thy works, be mindful of the rites of Ash Wednesday. Also says the same thing, that remember, man, that you are dust, and unto was another theme that made the mark at that point of time, which literally means in death I am reborn. So there was this obsession with time and life and death, which also became reflected in the poetry of the metaphysical poets. This is a very famous illustration from the Nuremberg Chronicle made by Michael Wohlgemuth. The Dance of Death was, Dance Macabre, the Dance Macabre 1493. So you can understand how the theme was very, very important at that point of time. Paintings were also made to remember people, to remind people that death was there, memento mori. So this is the very famous painting, Vanitas, by Philip de Champagne. Life, death, and time is reduced to three essentials. This is life, this is death, and towards the right you find time. That is, which is symbolized by the hourglass. This is again a very famous painting which juxtaposes youth with death. Youth represents life, and the skull in his hand represents death. So the two go side by side, hand in hand. The Renaissance preoccupation with death led to the theme of carpe diem, which oftentimes reflected in the poetry of the metaphysical poets. Like Andrew Marvell's To His Coy Mistress is all about that. The time is slipping by, so we need to take time by the forelocks and make the sun stand still, so to speak. Sorry. Paradoxes and puns were there, subtlety, surprises. This was how Dr. Johnson expressed it. The way George Herbert and other English poets torture one poor word 10,000 ways. This is what Dryden said, that they torture one poor word 10,000 ways in order to bring out paradoxes and puns, in order to bring ambiguation. Now, when we talk about, twisting one word 10,000 ways, we remember, like I said, that metaphysical poetry drew a lot on different influences from different places. Now, here I am, quoting from Constantine Huygens' Sunday. This poem is originally in Dutch. The poem that you see on the screen is originally in Dutch language, which I don't understand. And so I'm not going to harp on this, but we are going to talk about the English translation of the poem. But one thing that I just want to show you is that just take a look at the parts I have marked in yellow. Sunday, Sunday, ende, son, sun, godson, godsoon, godseen. Now, if we take a look at the English translation, you can just say it is translation by Coos Daly as Sunday. The poem is named Sunday. And just take a look at how many times the word sun comes up. This is I've marked them in yellow so that you can isolate them. So Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. Then he also harps upon the pronunciation of son, which also is sun. And then Sunday, sun. God's son, of course, talks about the Christ. God's someday, which means judgment day. And then God's son, which means the Christ. God's some, which means the judgment day. So Sunday, someday, Sunday, sin day. On because played upon through the punning on or the ambiguation of the word or its pronunciation as sun. So this is what the metaphysicals were also very fond of. They took this trait and they also applied it a number of times in their poetry. The other thing that metaphysical poetry is all about is epigrammatic packing a whole lot of meaning in
Voice is not audible.
the meaning of the act closely into these two very lines. This is what we know as epigrammatic concept of lines. Andrew Marvell, Dr. Pawar, do I have time? How much time do I have?
You have enough time. Just take your time, no issue at all. You can.
Okay, thank you. And is my voice coming proper now?
It's still breaking.
It is still breaking up, but the words are understandable at least, right?
Not much, but it's okay. It's okay. Proceed, because we are almost on the verge of conclusion.
Okay. So now we are just coming into a little bit more pointed discussion, because Andrew Marvell seems to be, after John Donne, Andrew Marvell seems to be the most popular among the metaphysical poets. So I am going to talk about one poem of Andrew Marvell's, and we are going to talk about the rest of the issues, keeping that poem as the referral point for our discussion. So Andrew Marvell, though earlier opposed to Oliver Cromwell's, he was a very politically active person. So though opposed to Oliver Cromwell's Commonwealth government, he showed his continuing and growing admiration for Cromwell through his writings also. Now in 1659, he was elected the member for Hull, the place where he hailed from, an office that he held even up to his death, serving skillfully and effectively. So much of his poetry, was kind of like it bore the brunt of his political influences also many a times. Now, this is Andrew Marvell, his small body of lyric poems, first recommended in the 19th century by Charles Lamb, has since appealed to many readers. And in the 20th century, he came to be considered one of the most notable poets of the century. To His Coy Mistress was first published in 1681 in Miscellaneous Poems, 3 years after the death of Marvell. This is what I was saying, that his poetry was not much appreciated during his life. He was dead for a month. Now, this is just a fun fact. This is a declaration, but this is a fun fact that I want to talk about. since 2007, in imitation of the university wits that we had in the Renaissance times, some Cambridge wits like Joe Swarbrick and James Purden have run an online Facebook group, an online social media group. It was on Facebook called Limeriterature. So it's like limerick literature. So Limeriterature on Facebook, and what they do is that they take canonical texts and across the world, they have talked about the Bible, they have talked about Dante, Dostoevsky, Harper Lee, Sylvia Plath, you name it, you have it. So they have a lot of limericks written about all these people. Also comes in. This is by M. DeGenova, a person called M. DeGenova, on To His Coy Mistress. Now, what he writes is, past poets and I both know how to write elegant verse to your brow, but we don't have time. To His Coy Mistress is all about having time. So they are worded like buzzards right now. So remember the last few lines of To His Coy Mistress, they are like, so if we cannot make our sun stand still of that, a fun take on, thus though we cannot make our sun stand still, or sun stand still, yet we will make him run. So this is a limerick, it's a digression, but it's a fun fact I just wanted to point out. Now, To His Coy Mistress is written in 3 parts, right? The first part begins with, had we but world enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. And it ends with, for lady, you deserve the state, nor would I love at a lower rate. Then you have the second part, the middle part, which begins with, but at my, the volta, but at my back, I always hear, time's winged chariot hurrying near. And it ends with the graves of place, but now therefore it's almost like it's on the skin. A specific design then is there in the poem, so it begins with there, had we, and then but at my back, and now therefore. So it's almost like 3 parts of an argument. T.S. Eliot observed the 3 each other. Syllogism is an argument, so syllogistic in relation to each other. But in his account of the poem, in The Art of Marvelous Poetry, Leishman initially disagrees with Eliot, writing that To His Coy Mistress sets out, and I quote, even a more rigidly syllogistic argument than I think we shall find in any of the more serious of the songs and sonnets, and disagrees with calling the argument syllogistic structure. That is what Leishman did not agree with. But then again, he qualifies those remarks by describing the poem's ratious nation as semi-syllogistic. So if he says semi-syllogistic, it again comes back to what T.S. Eliot was meaning by saying nearly syllogistic, so it's the same thing ultimately. What strikes one at the beginning of the play is a play with pronominal forms, like there is a his in the title, To His Coy Mistress. But then, when the poem begins, you find that it's in the first person, that is, at my back, I always hear. So the speaker in the poem is identical with the protagonist, and therefore we call this kind of poetry autodiagetic. That is, the person who is talking himself, who are both used as subjects of verbs and as modifiers of parts. To His Coy Mistress was at a time when thou was kind of like disappearing from usage of according to standard English word thou. Why did he do that? Instead
Excuse me.
three willing soul. And all.
Excuse me.
Hello?
Um, almost it's
Yes.
9:33. Uh, can you sum up?
So should we sum up now?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
All right.
After this sharing screen, please stop and then sum up.
We'll do that, yes. So, let me just skip a few. Okay. So these are the second sequences. I think I'll skip all that because time is running out a lot. Yes. So if we look at the three stanzas of To His Coy Mistress, we will find that there is a specific, one hand you have I, you have mine, you on the other hand you have you have thou, you have thine, you have your. But then slowly as the poem progresses, once the three stanzas are over, it makes a crossover from the asymmetrical pronominal approach to a symmetrical pronominal approach where it becomes us, our, we, etc. This is how the poem is kind of like structured. So the three versions of the love story that is given to the audience in negative in different ways to different degrees are narrated at the beginning in order to make a positive version with which the poem concludes more forceful and more convincingly. So I think I shall wrap up my lecture today because we are running short of time, and my 1 hour is already over. So I hope you liked this. Thank you very much. Thank you for your patient listening. And I think there have been a little problems in the audio of this program because of internet connectivity being a little unstable. But thank you for being there with me. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Dr. Pawar, over to you.
Please, ma'am, stop sharing and.
Yes, this one.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
So it has been a very nice lecture, studious lecture, scholarly lecture on different issues regarding to the metaphysical poetry, going beyond the physical nature. So especially the focus is made almost on different features and the aspects of the metaphysical poetry. It was a thorough understanding of the content. So this lecture will benefit the scholars, researchers, and academicians a lot. So I wish all the best to those who listen to this scholarly lecture, because this will definitely be beneficial and fruitful to them to make their future bright. So here,
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me over. It was a pleasure.
the question is that every time we face the internet connectivity issue and the issue of the sound. So I hope that in the next lecture, this issue will be sorted out. No issue at all. So thank you very much for being with us in Epitome lecture series. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me over. Thanks a lot.
I,
Swell